Hi, good day. So I am Arup Basu from ClusterMicro Technologies. Welcome to the Java OCP 21 certification series. So this series is designed to help you understand core Java concepts in a very clear and structured way. So we'll focus not just on theory but on how concepts are tested in the actual exam. So each topic will be explained with practical examples and exam style questions. The aim is also to help you think logically and avoid common mistakes. So many OCP questions are very tricky, not because they are difficult, but because they test very small details. So we'll pay very close attention to those details as we go along. So this series is useful whether you are starting your preparation or revising before the exam, or you are just increasing your Java fundamentals. Okay, so try to pause the video, think about the question, and then check the explanation. That approach will help you to build confidence and speed. And by the end of this series, you should be comfortable handling most exam scenarios. So let's go get started with today's topic.
Simple. 3 double quotes, write your content, 3 double quotes to close. But the OCP 21 exam goes much deeper than that. It will show you a text block and then ask you to identify the exact string content, okay? So including whether there is a trailing new line at the end, exactly how many leading spaces remain on each line, and what happens when you use the backslash or backslash dash x escape sequences, okay? So these are not obvious rules and most candidates get them very wrong the first time. In this video, we are going to go through every rule carefully with a real code example. So we'll leave this video knowing precisely what any text block produces, okay? Character by character. Let me start by showing you what life looked like before the text blocks existed. Look code at the top of the slide, right? String JSON, then slash in, then slash name, then slash John, then slash in, then slash age, then 30 slash in, then closing braces, right? This is a simple 4-line JSON object. That is all it is. But look at what you have to write to store it as a Java string before Java 15. Every line break had to be written as slash n. The new line escape sequence. Every double quote inside the string had to be escaped as slash then double quote. Because the double quote character is the string delimiter and Java needs to know these quotes are content, not the end of the string. Every line had to be concatenated with the plus operator and the whole thing had to be broken across multiple physical lines just to keep it readable. So now imagine this is not 4 lines of JSON but 40 lines of SQL, right? Or 100 lines of HTML. The escaping becomes a maintenance nightmare. So one missing backslash breaks the entire string. One misplaced quote causes a compiler error and it takes 10 minutes to find. So Java 15 introduced text blocks to solve exactly this. And they are now a fully stable production ready feature that is specifically tested on the OCP 21 exam. Now let us go through the text block version and every rule that controls how it works, okay? So block 1, if you see the basic text block, right? String JSON, then triple quote, then braces, name, John, age 30, then brace, closing brace, and then triple quote, right? Now look at the green text block version immediately below. Same JSON content, completely readable, no backslashes, no escape quotes, no concatenation operators. You write the content exactly as it should appear. So let me explain the structure precisely because every part of it matters for the exam, right? So if you see the opening triple quote, the text block begins with 3 consecutive double quote characters, right? This is called the opening delimiter. There is one absolute rule about this, and the violating this rule is a compiler error, which we will see at the bottom of the slide. The opening triple quote must be the very last thing on its line, okay? Nothing can follow it on the same line, not a space, not a character, nothing. A new line must come immediately after the opening triple quote and the content begins on the next line. So if you see the content lines, right, after the mandatory new line, the content begins. Here we have within braces, name, John, and age 30. So notice the indentation. In the source file, these lines are indented with spaces because the programmer wants the code to be visually aligned. The opening curly brace has 8 spaces before it The name and age lines have 12 spaces. The closing brace has 8 spaces. Okay. The question is, do these spaces become part of the string content? If they did, every line of the JSON would start with 8 or 12 spaces, which is not what you want. Okay. So this is where incidental whitespace stripping comes in. So Java looks at all the non-blank content lines and finds the one with minimum indentation, the fewest leading spaces. It also looks at the column position of the closing triple quote. Okay. Whichever is smaller, the minimum content indentation or the closing delimiter column, that many spaces are stripped from the beginning of every line. Okay. So in this example, all content lines have at least 8 spaces of leading indentation. The closing triple quote is also at column 8. So the minimum is 8 spaces. Okay. So Java strips exactly 8 spaces from every line. Okay, the line that has 8 spaces, then a brace, it becomes just a brace, okay, and opening brace, and then the line then name John with 12 spaces, then the content becomes name John with 4 spaces remaining, because 12 minus 8 is 4. And now about the closing triple quote. So it's on its own separate line indented at column 8, right? So this is the critical detail of our trailing new lines. When the closing triple quote is on its own line, there is a new line character that came just before it. The new line that ended the last content line containing the brace, closing brace. Okay. So Java includes that new line in the string content. The resulting string therefore ends with a new line character. So the string JSON contains name, John, age 30, closing brace, and then there is a last blank line. So the last blank line is actually a trailing new line, okay? And it's a trailing new line character at the very end of the string. Then there is a closing brace, but before the closing brace, there is a new line also, okay? So that's a last blank line. So here the last blank line is actually a trailing new line character at the very end of the string. We have to see this. This matters when you compare strings or use them in context where a trailing new line would cause problem, like HTTP request bodies or file content comparisons. Okay. So next we come closing triple quote on last content line, right? So we have this example, string compact equal to triple quotes, then hello, then world. Okay, triple quote. So here, closing triple quote on last content line, okay, there is no trailing new line here. So if you look at this second example, this is the direct contrast with the first block. The content is very simple, just hello and world on 2 lines, but look very carefully at where the closing triple quote sits, right? So world, then triple quote. The closing triple quote is on the same line as world, immediately after the D, okay? D of world. So there is no separate line for closing delimiter. Because the closing triple quote is not on its own line, there is no new line character between the last content character D of world and the closing delimiter. Java does not add a trailing new line here, okay? The string ends exactly at D of world, okay? The string compact contains exactly hello and world, okay? So there is one new line character between hello and world because they were on separate physical lines in the text block. But there is no trailing new line after world, okay? The string ends at D. So this is one of the most frequently tested text block rules on OCP 21, okay? The exam will show you a text block and ask you to identify whether the resulting string includes a trailing new line or not. The rule is very simple and absolute, okay? So closing triple quote on its own line, trailing new line is included. And closing triple quote at the end of a content line, there is no trailing new line, okay? So you have to memorize these 2 sentences, okay? They will appear in the exam. Then we come to escape sequences, right? We have string S1, then triple quote, then line 1, then slash, then line 2, and then there's a triple quote. So, and then we have string S2 equal to triple quote, end with space, then slash S, then next line, and triple quote, okay? So text blocks introduce 2 new escape sequences that do not exist in regular string literals. So these were added specifically to handle situations that arise uniquely with multiple line text, okay? The line continuation, escape or backslash at the end of line. So here we see that in S1, look at the first content line, right? Line 1, then slash. This is a backslash at the very end of the line. So this is a line continuation escape. Normally in a text block, Each physical line in your source code produces one line in the resulting string with a new line character at the end. The line continuation escape suppresses the new line, okay? So it tells Java to not include the new line that follows this line. So, and treat the new physical line as a continuation of this one, okay? So line 1, then backslash, followed by a new line, and then line 2 produces a single logical line in the string. Line 1, then space, then line 2. The two physical lines become one logical line, okay? The new line between them is gone. So this is very useful when you have a very long line of text. You want to break across two physical lines in your source code for readability without actually having a new line in the resulting string. Okay, then we have the backslash dash s, right? So in S2, look at the first content line, end with space, then backslash s. Notice the backslash s at the end, right? So the Java's text block processing automatically strips trailing white spaces from each content line. If you write end with space, then with two spaces at the end, those trailing spaces are stripped during processing. After stripping, the new line becomes end with space and there is no trailing spaces at all. But sometimes you genuinely need trailing spaces in your text block contents. So the slash s escape solves this, okay? So it represents a single space character, but more importantly, it is a very visible character that prevents the trailing white space stripper from removing the spaces before it. So by placing slash s at the end of the line, you anchor the trailing spaces. Java processes end with space, then slash s, and preserves the spaces before the slashes, okay? The resulting contains end with space, and it has the spaces that were there earlier, okay? So the content is up to and including the space represented by slashes and kept. So these two escape, backslash for line continuation and backslash s for significant space, are unique to text blocks. They do not exist in regular string literals. The exam tests them usually by asking what the resulting string content is when one of these appears, okay? Then we have compile error, right? So we have string bad, then triple quote, then hello, then triple quote, right? So it will lead to compile error. Content must start on the next line. So this is the most common text block compile error, and exam uses it as a trap. The opening triple quote is immediately followed by a letter H. There is no new line between the opening delimiter and content. So this violates the rule we established at the beginning. The opening triple quote must be the last thing on its line. A new line must immediately follow it, okay? So no content, no spaces, nothing else can appear on the same line after the opening triple quote, okay? The compiler sees a triple quote hello and immediately raises a compile error, okay? Compiler error. So illegal text block opening delimiter sequence and missing line terminator. So this is the syntax error. It is caught at compile time. You will never see it. You'll never see it as a runtime exception. Okay. So if you make this mistake, the code simply does not compile. Okay. The correct version is string bad equal to triple quote. In the next line, hello, triple quote, and then semicolon. The content hello is now on a new line after the opening delimiter. The compile error disappears, okay? On the exam, they will show you something like string bad equal to triple quote hello, triple quote ask, does this compile? The answer is usually no. It's always no, actually. So let me give you 4 rules for the slide in plain language. So you can write them down. And rule 1 is the opening triple quote must be the last thing on its line. Then rule 2 is closing triple quote on its own line means a trailing new line is included in the string. And then rule 3 is incidental whitespace, the common leading indentation shared by all content lines. It is automatically stripped. Java calculates the minimum indentation across all non-blank content lines and the closing delimiter column, okay? And strips that many spaces from every line. Internal relative indentation within the content is always preserved. And rule 4 is 2 escape sequences unique to text block, right? So backslash at the end of a line suppresses the following new line. It will lead to line continuation. And 2 physical lines become 1 logical line. And backslash s represents a significant space. Prevents trailing white space stripping on the line, okay? So we have to know all these 4 rules. So thanks for your time, and we'll meet you in the next video. If you got value from this video, please like and subscribe. It genuinely helps this series reach other OCP candidates who need it, okay? So if you want to practice OCA questions right now, you can go to javalearn.clustermicro.com. Over 1600 questions are there, and there are timed exams, detailed explanations, and free trial available. So OCP 21 practice questions are also coming soon. You can email ab.clustermicro@gmail.com if you want early access notification. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for your time.